The day I found out, I was sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of cereal before school. I was 17 years old. It was a Tuesday morning in late March. The sun was coming through the window and hitting the tile floor in that warm way it does in spring, and everything felt ordinary, normal, safe. That was the last morning I ever felt that way in that house. My mum walked in holding a brochure. She was smiling, that big, performed smile she always had when she was about to say something she knew was wrong. She set the brochure down in front of me. It was for a Tesla Model 3, cherry red. And before I could even ask why she was showing it to me, she said the words that changed everything. "We used your college fund to buy Kayla her graduation gift. We figured you're smart enough to get loans." I stared at her, then I looked at the brochure, then I looked back at her. "All of it?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. "She worked so hard, Ryan. She deserves this." $22,000, gone, just like that. My name is Ryan Calloway. I grew up in a suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. Middle-class neighborhood, ranch-style house, 2-car garage. From the outside, we looked like every other family on the block. But inside that house, there were 2 versions of childhood happening at the same time. And I was living the wrong one. My sister Kayla is 3 years older than me, and from the time I was old enough to understand what was happening, she was the sun that everything in our family revolved around. My mum, Linda, treated Kayla like she was made of glass and gold at the same time. Fragile enough to protect from every hard thing in life, precious enough to receive everything we had. I was the opposite. I was the background, the afterthought. The one who was fine when I was struggling, capable when I needed help, and mature enough to handle it whenever something was taken from me to give to her. Dad, Tom, wasn't a bad man. He just wasn't a present one. He worked long hours at a logistics company, came home tired, ate dinner, watched TV, went to sleep. He loved us both. I genuinely believe that. But he let my mum run the house, and my mum had already decided a long time ago how that house was going to run. Kayla got the new clothes, Kayla got the better bedroom, Kayla got the car lessons paid for, the cheerleading fees covered, the SAT tutoring, the graduation party with a rented venue, and a DJ. I got hand-me-downs, a used bike, and a library card. And for a long time I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was stronger for it. I told myself that one day none of this would matter. I had no idea how right I was going to be. But first, I need to tell you about the college fund. When I was born, my grandpa, my dad's dad, a quiet, serious man named Earl, opened a savings account for me. Over the years, he deposited money into it consistently. Birthday money, Christmas money, a portion of his pension savings. By the time I was 17, that account had grown to just over $22,000. It wasn't enough to cover 4 years of college, but it was a head start. It was supposed to be the thing that gave me a real shot. Grandpa Earl died when I was 15. He left the account legally in my parents' names until I turned 18, because that was standard at the time. He trusted them. He had no reason not to. He didn't know what I knew. When I was 16, Kayla graduated high school. She'd gotten into a mid-tier state school on a partial scholarship for, I'm not making this up, being a cheerleader. She needed a car to drive to campus. And my mother, without telling my father, without telling me, without a single conversation, walked into a dealership and put $22,000 down on a cherry red Tesla Model 3. Because Kayla deserved it, I sat at that kitchen table for a long time after my mum walked back out of the room. The brochure just sat there in front of me, shiny and red. I remember thinking this can't be real. I remember thinking there must be some mistake. I remember pushing my cereal away because I suddenly felt sick. Then I went to school. Because what else was I going to do? I told my dad that night. He got quiet. That heavy, defeated kind of quiet. He said he'd talk to her about it. He never did. Or if he did, nothing changed. Because 3 weeks later, Kayla was driving that Tesla to and from the mall, and I was still sitting at that kitchen table, eating cereal before school, trying to figure out how to build a future with nothing. Here's what you need to understand about that moment in my life. It didn't break me. It didn't make me bitter, not in the way people expect. What it did was make me clear, crystal clear. It was like a fog I hadn't even noticed, lifted all at once, and I could suddenly see my life and my family for exactly what they were. I saw that no one in that house was ever going to hand me anything. I saw that waiting for fairness was the same as giving up. I saw that the only way out was through, and through meant doing it myself. I graduated high school the following year with a 3.9 GPA. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I got a part-time job at a grocery store the summer before college and saved every dollar. I applied to Ohio State's computer science program and got in with a combination of merit scholarships, a federal loan, and a work-study arrangement. My mum's reaction when I told her, "See, we knew you'd figure it out." She said it like it was a compliment. I moved into my dorm in August and I never really moved back home. I went back for holidays when I had to, for a few years, because I kept hoping something would shift. I kept hoping someone would apologise or acknowledge what happened or just once treat me like I mattered as much as Kayla did. But every time I went back, it was the same house, the same dynamic, the same invisible ranking. Meanwhile, Kayla dropped out of college after one semester. It wasn't for her. She came home, lived in her old bedroom, worked part-time at a salon for about a year, then quit when my mum told her she didn't have to work if she didn't want to. She got into a relationship with a guy named Brandon, who sold supplements online and spent most of his time posting gym videos. They moved in together at 22, into an apartment my parents helped pay for. Kayla didn't have a career, she didn't have savings. She had a lifestyle funded by a mother who confused love with enabling, and a father too worn down to say no. And I watched all of this from a distance during holidays through occasional family texts. And I said nothing. I just kept working. College was hard. Not emotionally. I actually loved it. It was the first time in my life I was in an environment where I was judged on what I produced, not on who I was to someone else. In that world, I was just Ryan Calloway, the guy who got things done, who showed up early, who learned fast. I thrived in that. I majored in computer science with a minor in business. By my junior year, I had 2 internships under my belt. One at a mid-sized software company in Columbus, one at a tech startup in Cincinnati that was building logistics automation tools. That second one changed everything. The startup was called Vantage Systems. It was run by a woman named Diane Park, and she was one of those rare people who could see potential in someone before they'd fully grown into it. She hired me as an intern in January of my junior year, and by May she'd offered me a part-time contractor role through my senior year. By the time I graduated, I had a full-time offer. I moved to Cincinnati at 22 with a salary of $68,000, which felt like all the money in the world at the time, and a job title of junior software developer. I rented a studio apartment downtown, drove a used Honda Civic, and I worked like I had something to prove. Which, of course, I did. I'm not going to make this sound like it was easy or like I never doubted myself, because I doubted myself constantly. There were nights I called my college roommate Marcus at midnight just to say, "I don't think I can do this." And he'd stay on the phone with me for an hour reminding me who I was. There were weekends I worked 12-hour days and still felt behind. There were times I sat in meetings with people a decade older than me and felt like a fraud. But I kept going. And something about being in an environment where your work was what mattered. Not who you were related to, not how charming you were, not whether someone loved you more. Something about that was like oxygen to me. I could breathe in a way I never could growing up. By 25, I was a mid-level developer. By 26, I was leading a small team. By 27, I had been promoted to engineering manager, overseeing a department of 11 people, and earning $140,000 a year. Diane called me the best hire she'd ever made. She meant it as a compliment. I took it as a responsibility. Vantage Systems grew fast during those years. We went from a 30-person startup to a company of over 200 employees. We closed a significant funding round. We opened a second office. And when Diane restructured the management team in preparation for that growth, she created a new role, Director of Engineering Operations. She gave it to me. I was 28 years old. I was making $190,000 a year, plus equity. I had a team of 26 people and full hiring authority over a department that was central to the company's expansion. I had my own office, a company credit card, and more responsibility than I ever imagined having at that age. I bought a condo downtown. I got a better car, a used but solid BMW, nothing flashy. I started investing. I built the life I'd been constructing piece by piece since I was 17 years old, sitting at that kitchen table, looking at a Tesla brochure that represented everything I'd been robbed of. And I didn't tell my family. Not really. My dad knew I was doing well in tech. My mum knew I had some kind of manager job. But I'd never given them the specifics. Part of it was that they'd never really asked. Part of it was that they wouldn't have understood the industry. And part of it, the part I didn't fully admit to myself until later, was that I wasn't ready for them to know. Something in me knew that information was going to matter someday. I didn't know how. I just knew that someday came on a random Wednesday afternoon in October, about 3 years after I became director. I was in the middle of a budget meeting when my assistant knocked on the glass door of my office and slid a piece of paper to me. It was the afternoon's interview schedule. We had 3 candidates coming in for a newly posted position: Associate Coordinator of Platform Operations, entry-level to mid-level role, good salary for the experience level. It had been posted publicly on LinkedIn and a few job boards for about 3 weeks. I glanced down the list. The third name on the afternoon's interview schedule made me stop breathing for about 5 full seconds. Kayla Calloway. I read it again. Then I looked up at my assistant Priya, who had no idea why I'd suddenly gone completely still. I looked back down at the paper. Same name, same last name as mine. Priya, I said slowly. Did you pull full resumes for these? She handed me a folder. I opened it to the 3rd tab. There was a headshot. One of those LinkedIn profile pictures where you can tell someone paid for a professional photographer. My sister. Older now, 28, but unmistakably her. The same sharp cheekbones, the same way she tilted her head in photos. The resume was thin. Some retail work. A few months at a real estate office as a receptionist. A 6-month stint at a marketing firm that I suspected hadn't ended well based on the gap after it. And at the top, under her objective statement, a line that I read 3 times because I couldn't process it the first 2. Seeking a growth-oriented role in a dynamic tech company where I can apply my communication skills and ambition. I sat back in my chair. My heart was doing something strange. Not quite anger. Not quite the old childhood pain. Something more complicated. Something that felt almost like fate handing you exactly what you'd been patient enough to wait for without ever knowing you were waiting. I closed the folder, I finished the budget meeting, and then I made a decision that I have never once regretted. I was going to conduct that interview myself. Now I need you to understand something. I want to be clear about my mindset walking into that interview room. I wasn't thinking about revenge in the cartoon villain sense. I wasn't planning to humiliate her or be cruel. I'm not that person. What I was thinking was, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to run an honest interview. I'm going to treat her exactly the way I would treat any other candidate. No different. Not worse, but absolutely not better. Because that, treating her like everyone else, was itself the most radical thing I could do. She had never in her life been treated like everyone else. She had always been treated like the exception, like the special case, like the one who deserved more just for showing up. And here in this building, in this room, under my authority, there were no exceptions. I asked Priya to keep the interview order as is and not mention anything about our connection. She didn't know there was one. I fixed my tie. Yes, I wear a tie, I know. And I waited. She walked in at 2:15 in the afternoon. For about 2 seconds when she first saw me, she didn't recognise me. I've changed a lot since I was 17. I'm taller, I'm broader, I wear my hair differently, and I carry myself in a way that's different from the quiet kid who sat at the back of every family dinner. Then it clicked. I could see it happen in real time on her face. Her eyes went wide, her smile flickered. "Ryan," she said. "Hi, Kayla," I said. "Please sit down." She sat. She looked around the room like she was waiting for someone to come in and explain this. No one did. "You work here?" she asked. "I do," I said. I folded my hands on the table. "I'm the Director of Engineering Operations. I lead the department this position falls under. Are you comfortable proceeding with the interview?" She blinked. I watched her recalibrate. Yeah, of course. Yes. I gave her every professional courtesy. I asked her the same questions I'd ask anyone. I listened to her answers carefully and fairly. And here's the thing about Kayla that I realised in that room. She wasn't a bad person. She wasn't malicious. She was just completely unprepared for a world that didn't already love her. She stumbled over basic questions about her experience. She used vague language where specifics were needed. She smiled her way through gaps in her knowledge the way someone does when they've always been able to charm their way past things. She didn't have what the job required. It wasn't close. At the end of the interview, I thanked her for coming in. I told her we'd be in touch. I walked her to the elevator myself, which I do for all candidates because I think it's the decent thing to do. In the elevator lobby, just before the doors opened, she grabbed my arm. "Ryan," she said quietly, "I really need this job." I looked at her. I know it wasn't always fair. Growing up, I know that. She paused. "But I'm your sister." The doors opened. "I'll be in touch by end of week," I said. And I meant it. I went back to my office. I sat down. I thought about what she'd said for a long time. I know it wasn't always fair. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone and call her back right then and have the conversation we'd never had. But I knew that wasn't the moment for it. The moment for it would come. 3 days later, I sent her a formal rejection email. Polite, professional, specific. I cited her lack of technical coordination experience and noted that her background in client-facing roles, while valuable, didn't match the technical depth the position required. I wished her well in her search. ICC, Seed HR, everything by the book, and then I waited because I knew what was coming next. It took 4 hours. My phone rang at 6:47 in the evening. My mother. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. The gist. "Ryan, I cannot believe you. Your own sister came to you for help and you turned her away. Do you know how embarrassed she is? How hurt she is? After everything we did for you, this is how you treat your family. Call me back. After everything we did for you." I sat with that phrase for a minute. Then I put my phone face down on the counter and made dinner. She called again the next morning. And the morning after that, my dad texted me, a rare thing, just saying, "Hey, maybe give Mum a call." Kayla texted me a long message that started with, "I can't believe you," and ended with something about how she'd always been there for me, which was so detached from reality that I actually had to put my phone down and walk away before I responded. But something about all of it, the calls, the texts, the messages, something about the weight of all of it gathering in my chest made me realize I was done waiting. Not for revenge, not for some dramatic moment. I was done waiting to say the thing that I had been carrying since I was 17 years old, eating cereal at a kitchen table. I called my mum back on a Sunday morning. I'd been planning it all week. I knew what I wanted to say. I was calm, genuinely calm. Not the performing calm of someone pretending to be okay. I was calm the way you are when you finally decided something and you know it's right. She answered on the second ring. "Ryan, finally. Mom, I'm going to talk and I need you to just listen for a minute. Can you do that?" A pause. "Okay." I told her. All of it. Not angry, not crying, just clear. I told her about what it felt like to grow up in that house as the one who didn't matter as much. I told her about the college fund and what it had cost me. Not just financially, but in terms of trust, in terms of what I understood a parent's love to be. I told her that I had spent 11 years building a life with my own hands, without help from anyone in that family, and that I was proud of what I'd built. And then I told her the part she didn't know. I told her my title. I told her my salary. And I was specific about the number. I told her about the equity. I told her about the condo, the savings, the retirement accounts, the investments. I wasn't bragging. I was just finally telling the truth about what I'd become while no one was paying attention. There was a very long silence. "Ryan," she said. And for the first time in my life, I heard something in my mother's voice that I didn't recognize. It took me a second to place it. Then I got it. It was shame. "I didn't know," she said. Which wasn't exactly the point, but I let it stand. "I know you didn't," I said. "You never asked." Another silence. "Kayla," she started. Kayla applied for an entry-level position. She didn't have the qualifications. I evaluated her the same way I evaluate every candidate. "That's not cruelty, Mum. That's what fairness looks like. I know it might be unfamiliar." I didn't say that last part to be cruel. I said it because it was true. We talked for almost 2 hours that morning. It wasn't a movie-style reconciliation. My mum didn't suddenly transform into someone else. But she listened. She actually listened. And at the end, she said something I hadn't expected. I think I made a mistake. A big one. I think I was so focused on giving Kayla the childhood I didn't have that I forgot to see you. It wasn't an apology. Not fully, but it was something. My dad got on the phone briefly before we hung up. He didn't say much. He's not a man of many words, but he said, "I'm proud of you, son." I should have said that more. I had to hang up quickly after that one. I'll just leave it at that. The part I haven't told you yet is what happened about 2 months after the interview. The real twist. The one I didn't see coming even after everything. Kayla called me herself. Not to yell. Not to guilt trip. She called on a Thursday evening and I almost didn't pick up. But something made me answer. "I want to apologise," she said. No preamble. Just that. I waited. Not just for the interview thing. For all of it. Growing up. I knew, Ryan. I knew you were treated differently. I told myself it was normal. I told myself you were fine. I think I knew I wasn't treated fairly either. In a different way. But I let it happen because it benefited me. And I'm sorry. Now, I want to be honest with you about how I responded. I didn't say it's okay and because it wasn't. I didn't immediately forgive her in the way you'd wrap up a scene in a movie. I said, "I appreciate you saying that. It means something. I need some time." She said she understood. What I didn't know in that moment was that Kayla's life had quietly been falling apart for the past year. Brandon, the supplement guy, had left her. The apartment my parents had been helping fund had become financially unsustainable. She was genuinely trying to start over, trying to build something real for the first time. The job application hadn't been a casual reach. It had been a desperate one. She'd been humbled by life in a way that my mother's protection had shielded her from for too long. I thought about that a lot. About how the thing my parents thought they were doing for her, protecting her from every hard thing, carrying her over every difficult moment, had actually left her utterly unprepared for a world that doesn't love you by default. The Tesla had been gone for 2 years by then. She'd had to sell it. Meanwhile, I had calluses from 11 years of climbing without a net. Those calluses had built something. Over the next few months, Kayla and I started talking. Slowly. Carefully. Not like we'd always been close because we hadn't, but like two adults who shared a history and were choosing, for the first time, to be honest about it. I referred her to a couple of resources for an online certification program in project coordination. She enrolled. She stuck with it, which surprised me, and then made me feel guilty for being surprised. About 4 months later, one of my colleagues at a different company, a woman named Jess who runs operations at a mid-sized firm across town, mentioned she was hiring. The role was a junior coordinator position, much better fit than what Kayla had applied for with me. I didn't call in a favour. I sent Jess an honest note saying I knew a candidate who I thought had real potential, but was early in rebuilding her professional profile, and asked if she'd give the resume a fair look. Jess interviewed her, offered her the job. I'm not going to tell you things are perfect now. My mum still favours Kayla in small ways she probably doesn't even notice. Some patterns are too deep to fully undo. My dad is still quite in that way that can feel like absence even when he's in the room. Family dinners are still uncomfortable sometimes, but something shifted, something real. Last Thanksgiving, the first one I'd been home for in 3 years. I sat at that same kitchen table. The house was smaller than I remembered, the way houses get when you've lived in the world long enough. My mum had cooked too much food, which is what she does when she's nervous. My dad sat at the head of the table, looking tired but present. Kayla sat across from me. She looked different. Not physically. She looked the same. But there was something quieter about her, something more grounded. She'd been at her new job for 7 months. She was doing well, Jess had told me. She was learning fast. Before we ate, she raised her glass and said, "I just want to say, I'm proud of you, Ryan. I mean it. And I'm sorry it took me so long to say it out loud." My mum started to cry. She's not usually a crier, so it was a little startling. My dad put his fork down and nodded slowly. I looked around that table, at these imperfect people, who had failed me in real ways and loved me in imperfect ways, and were sitting here now, a little broken, a little repaired, trying. And I made a decision right then. I decided to stay. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because I was strong enough now to choose it without losing myself. That's the thing no one tells you about this kind of story. The revenge part, the interview, the rejection, the phone call where my mum finally heard the truth. That stuff felt important in the moment. And it was. I'm not going to pretend that when I said my salary out loud over the phone, some part of me didn't feel a satisfaction that was 17 years in the making. I'm human. But that wasn't the ending. That was just a door opening. The real ending is this. I am 31 years old. I have built a life that I am proud of from a starting point that was designed to hold me back. I did not do it with bitterness as my fuel, though I had plenty of it. I did it because I decided early that I was the only one responsible for my own life, and I treated that responsibility with everything I had. My sister is learning, late but genuinely, what it means to earn something. My parents are confronting, slowly, imperfectly, the weight of the choices they made. And I am standing in a place I built myself with a view I earned, looking back at that kitchen table and feeling something I didn't expect to feel. Not triumph, not even justice exactly. Something quieter than that. Something that feels, honestly, like peace. The Tesla is gone, the college fund is gone. All those years of being invisible in a house where I should have been seen. Those are gone too. But here's what's still here. Every hour I worked when I was exhausted. Every scholarship application I filled out instead of giving up. Every early morning and late night and moment of doubt I pushed through anyway. All of that is still here. All of that is me. And nobody, not my mother, not my sister, not anyone who ever looked past me like I wasn't worth seeing. Nobody can sell that. If this story hit home for you, you already know why. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're sitting at your own kitchen table right now, looking at your own version of that brochure, I just want you to know, what they took can't define you. What you build next, that's entirely yours.